Ladies and gentlemen, as we dive into the program, it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for the morning, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Nazir Razak, who will be delivering the keynote address on ASEAN, a gateway to global innovation and market expansion. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Nazir Razak to the stage.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Rafina Yasmin Othman, Chairman Meranti. Yang berbahagia Datuk Wira Dr. Haji Rais Hussein, CEO Meranti, Board of Meranti. Yang berbahagia Datuk Idham Nawawi, CEO Celcom DG, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me say how honored I am to be invited by Meranti to this summit. I also find it a bit unusual to be giving the keynote before the opening ceremony, but according to Dr. Rais, they do things differently at Meranti. So you have me as the opening act before the launch. But well done as a central research and innovation commercialization agency. This initiative, this iNation Global Summit, is exemplary. This is a unique platform for connecting visionaries, innovators, and change makers, facilitating impactful conversations about innovation and growth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity for me to basically put out there the importance of the region as a whole, as well as my thoughts on the innovation ecosystem here in Malaysia in particular. Now, next year, Malaysia will chair ASEAN. That is the entire neighborhood of 700 million people, the third most populous after China and India, and has a GDP of about $4 trillion US. What does that mean? That means that we share this regional market that is 20 times the size of Malaysia in terms of population and 9 times the size of Malaysia in terms of its economy. Our role as chairman is actually, when you think about it, analogous to us saying that, look, there is this annual street party, and this year, the party is happening in our house. So what does that mean? That is an opportunity to show off our house, but also to focus our minds on what the street has to offer. That means if we get all the houses in the streets to collaborate, together we can achieve things that are far greater than the sum of parts. Yeah, that is how I look at Malaysia's chairmanship of ASEAN. Now, how much greater than the sum of parts? Well, that's all on us. How do we bring to bear the potential of ASEAN as a market? And how do we overcome the barriers to trade and investments? More importantly, how do we drive innovation and entrepreneurship that is so critical in this new age of technology, where technology seems to have reached a stratospheric height for many of us. But if you talk to those in the know, they tell us actually this is just the beginning of how AI, quantum computing is actually going to completely transform our daily lives and also our livelihoods. Here in ASEAN, we are not starting from scratch. We are already the home of some great companies, success stories in fintech, in e-commerce, in manufacturing. And the ASEAN population is relatively young and tech-savvy, and our digital infrastructure is pretty advanced relative to other regions in this world. The question then is, how do we take this further? How do we create an environment where innovation is encouraged and enabled? How do we make economies of scale of ASEAN a reality for our business? As chairman of the ASEAN Business and Advisory Council, Malaysia, next year I have the honor of chairing ASEAN Business Advisory Council as a whole. And our plan is to move the needle on regional economic integration. And I believe that we have already come up with some key focus areas that could result in an unprecedented year of progress for ASEAN integration. I would like to highlight some of the more relevant initiatives to this audience today, because I want to encourage all of you to think regional as you move forwards. The first idea is a novel concept that we are pushing to introduce. This is the concept of ASEAN business entities. What is it? Well, we thought about it because, this notion of free movement of people and businesses across borders is not possible. ASEAN has been talking about this since 2007, and it is better to call a spade a spade. There is no appetite for it in many countries, and really, when you look at the European Union, how they brought down borders so much, people can move freely, operations can move freely, there is an argument to say that maybe they went too far. Certainly, the Brits think they went too far. So if we can't do it for the region as a whole, yet we want our companies to enjoy the economies of scale of ASEAN. We want you guys to start businesses and think, okay, it's not just starting a business for any one ASEAN market, but the whole of ASEAN. So how do we do it? Well, we introduced the notion of an ASEAN business entity. Why not allow our companies the flexibility to move people and operations? Not countries as a whole, but just companies, which are recognized by the government as ASEAN business entity. This is imperative because our market, ASEAN, we talk about 700 million people, but it's fragmented. It's 10 countries. There's still quite hard borders when it comes to business. So we need to bring them down so that our companies can operate like companies in China, companies in India, companies in Europe, companies in US. Otherwise, we remain at a disadvantage. And this is, I think, a very clever idea. And I hope that we are able to get this through the various governments. And our idea is that those companies that are labeled ABEs, who are they? Well, they should be Malaysian companies who are regionally active. They should be multinationals who are regionally active. And they should be companies in important sectors, like the ones you guys operate in, maybe healthcare, maybe AI. Those companies deserve this kind of label so they can enjoy the flexibilities of operating like a company operating in a market of 700 million people. So that is one idea that we are pushing very hard. The second initiative is about growing the private market industry in ASEAN. Capital is the lifeblood of entrepreneurs. I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys that. But as governments in the region, we've been too focused on the stock markets, the public markets, where they're all big companies. What do we do about the smaller companies? What do we do about the entrepreneurs? So here, we've done a study where the percentage of capital in private markets to GDP, in ASEAN is low, right? It's about 0.5% GDP. More developed markets, between 1.5% to 2.5% of GDP. There is a problem. Not enough money in private equity and venture capital. Not enough money to support businesses like yours. Not enough money to support innovators like you. So we think that ASEAN has the potential to increase this by 2 to 3 times, channeling something like 36 to 60 billion US dollars into this space. And we must do it. To do it, we've come up with a list of recommendations to the ASEAN governments how to encourage the development of this industry, this venture capital, private market industries across ASEAN as a whole. So, inshallah, if our recommendations get put through, you will be able to get access potentially to a lot more capital. The final initiative I want to touch on here is the work we are doing to create private sector collaborative platform in key areas like carbon markets and artificial intelligence. These are fast-changing areas, And rather than going into specific reforms, because these sectors are far too dynamic for us, we're creating multinational private sector platforms so that we can collaborate with the leaders in these sectors in other markets in ASEAN. If you look at AI, the US and China are way ahead of everyone else. So let's think about it. Why don't we not only collaborate across ASEAN, but bring ASEAN together and find other countries, other regions to collaborate with us. For instance, we've had quite serious conversations with Japanese counterparts, Indian counterparts, who say, look, you are still behind, we are also behind. We come together and try and build the AI industry together. And this is not necessarily to compete in AI spaces that US and China are already so far advanced, but also to make sure that the development of AI is used in the right way for mankind. Mankind as a whole, and not for nations or groups to dominate others. Yeah? So ladies and gentlemen, I'm quite hopeful that Malaysia will make a big difference to ASEAN integration next year. What I've highlighted is just a small portion of the many plans the government and ASEAN-BAC Malaysia are working on. The message to entrepreneurs and innovators in this room, again, is think ASEAN as you want to develop your ideas. The market is so much larger, the needs of the region more diverse, and the hard truth is this, that if you don't think ASEAN, someone else will. And if he or she is able to bring the scale of the region to his or her idea of business, then he or she is going to eat your lunch. Yeah. Think about that, please. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me move on to another element of innovation, which is this. The importance of creating the right ecosystem and environment and culture towards risk-taking and innovation. I will confess upfront that I have never had a startup myself, and I remain in awe of people who are brave enough to do that. But I have seen innovation and risk-taking from within large organizations that I used to lead, and I have invested in many startups here and in the United Kingdom. The first point I want to make is that the flip side of innovation is the notion of daring to fail. Yeah? Taking risks, daring to fail. If you don't dare to fail, you won't take enough risks. And as a society, I think Malaysians are too hard on failure, too quick to criticize and put the boot in, if you like. So much so that I have met potential entrepreneurs who actually fear taking the plunge for fear of failure and the labeling that comes with that. As a CEO, I used to always make sure that the organization that I ran never unduly punished mistakes so that people would not fear failure. What is important is the analysis and rationale for decision-making in the first place. If those were sound, then you should not be too hard on failure so that people will dare to be creative and innovative. And remember, we talk about innovators, entrepreneurs, but within big companies, there's also a need to stimulate thinking, to stimulate innovation. Yeah? Again, in order to do that, when you evaluate people, it should always be on a net basis. The good that they've done and the not so good that they've done, on a net basis, have they performed? Don't just focus on the losses, don't just focus on the mistakes. Focus on their holistic performance. And of course, a case in point is the recent kerfuffle around the 20 million losses that Khazanah realized in Fashion Ballet. Yeah, that is a subject of controversy. Well, why don't we also think about the 800 million that Khazanah made on Farm Fresh, supporting a startup business like Farm Fresh? Or the 1.5 billion US dollars Khazanah made in investing in Alibaba at an early stage. Yeah, so we must look at losses and profits together. If you just bash people up because of one thing that didn't go so well, then we're going to have a problem. Because people will say, hey, there's no point me taking this big risk to make big profits, because as soon as I make one small mistake, I get bashed up. I would actually argue that some losses are a necessary part of optimal profits. I remember when I was running the bank, one of the bankers one year came up to me and very proudly told me, he said, sir, the good news is I have no bad loans at all. So this person, she thought I was going to applaud. I said, in that case, you probably are not taking enough risk. Yeah? Because banks make margins on interest because they are expected to lose some money on some loans. Yeah? So bankers must keep their eyes focused on some higher risk loans as well. Yeah? That's what gets the economy going. Don't just lend money where you're surely going to recover. That's the easy thing to do. You lend money when there's a lot of collateral. But you take more risk, you earn a higher margin, then maybe one or two will fail. But that's okay, right? To me, as a banker, if you got zero non-performing loans, then you're not doing your job. Yeah. And similarly, I would argue that banks in Malaysia, at least, are too hard on failures. So many times I used to get these reports saying that we cannot lend to this person because he or she is a former bankrupt. Well, I used to push back and say, maybe because he or she has been bankrupt before, he or she has learned not to make the same mistakes again. Better than someone that's completely green, no? So that is a kind of mindset I think financial institutions need to embrace. Yeah, just because someone has a failed business in the past, we shouldn't just say they cannot be supported, because guess what? They had the guts to try something new, had the guts to innovate. It didn't go right. Businesses fail, but it's okay. You know, help them get up and try again. And similarly, the last point I want to make here is that we cannot be too quick to criticize companies generally that make losses. You must remember that some of the most valuable companies in the world today are still making losses, because people make losses because they're still investing. People make losses because they're building market share. And it's okay, so long as in the long term, the idea is they will make good money. And so, you know, again, you know, as a society, we must be able to discern this whole notion of profit and loss. What does it really mean? Yeah, this 1 year of losses, what does it mean? You know, it's not a bad thing to make 1 year of losses. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think as a society, we collectively must move the needle on how we look at failure and losses to encourage people to take more risks. And we need more innovators and entrepreneurs, and that is for sure, and that is why Meranti exists, and that is why I applaud the work that Meranti is doing. So in closing, I'd just like to say that innovation is not just a concept. It's the building block of a brighter future for Malaysia and for ASEAN and for its entrepreneurs. By embracing risk-taking and fostering collaboration, we can create a region where ideas thrive and opportunities abound. This, I think, is really ASEAN's moment, and I hope all of us can seize this moment for ASEAN, moment for Malaysia, to make that ASEAN a reality. So let's transform challenges into opportunities, ideas into impact, and dreams into reality. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Tan Sri Nazir Razak, for your invaluable insights.